Hello, and welcome to the Paul Green Comedy PaulCast. This is for July 20th, 2024, episode 234. Stand-up comedian, actor, improviser, but most of all, a dreamer. Paul Green coming to you. So, yesterday was quite a crazy day. I woke up in Blythe, California, which is a border town right there between Arizona and California, and I was en route to a couple things I had out in LA. So the first thing was my talent agency, who reps me out in Los Angeles, was having a beach day with all of their clients, and they are a huge agency. There were over 600 RSVPs that day. So they pretty much started, it was like an all-day thing. So it was just, hey, we're going to be at the beach all day. Anytime you get here, just show up and come network with us. So my original intention was to get there like at 1 or 2 p.m., hang out for a couple of hours, and then I had a comedy show up in Simi Valley, which is about an hour north of LA. So what ends up happening is I was absolutely floored exhausted, and so I slept in much later than I intended. And I pretty much checked out of the hotel at checkout time, like at 11. But I did not do a very good job of timing the how long it would take, because it ended up initially being a 4-hour drive to Blythe to the beach, which means initially my GPS said I was going to get there at about 3. I'm like, well, that's fine. That's still much later than I wanted to get there, but whatever. So I started driving from Blythe to the beach. I got a 4-hour drive. That 4-hour drive, I started hitting major traffic. And anybody who knows LA, the LA area, you just know that traffic jams are just a thing. And by the time I started getting about 2 hours away, all of this traffic backup stuff started happening. And then I saw my ETA go from 3 p.m. and it just started bumping up. It's like 3 p.m. Now it's going to be 3:15. Now it's going to be 3:30. Now it's going to be 3:40. Now it's going to be 3:55. So by the time I get to the ocean, I get there at about 4 o'clock. However, it gets worse. For some reason, they had blocked off both of the parking lots to the beach. And there was a line of cars backing up down the PCH there for like a half mile. And it was like a standstill. And that was just to get into the parking lot of the beach. So initially I'm like going, screw this. I'm going to go find another way somewhere else to park, which of course is probably what everyone else was trying to do. So I end up driving south along the PCH for about 2 miles, just trying to see, is there any sort of like parking garage? It's like, I'm fine walking. I just don't want to wait in that line. So I drive about 2 miles one direction, and there's literally nothing. It's all like, it's just a stretch of the beach where there's just nothing. When I say nothing, I mean no types of like parking areas, or like, like if you go to Santa Monica, there's huge parking garages within walking distance of Santa Monica. So you can just park your car in a parking garage and then walk down to the beach, and there's always tons of spaces because like the promenade and stuff. Well, we're south of Santa Monica, probably about 5-10 miles. I don't remember what the beach name was. So I try south for a while, and I get nothing. So then I'm like, well, let me go head north. So then I head north, and then I head about a mile, 2 miles north of where we were supposed to meet. And it's just, there is just nowhere to park. Every single available parking spot is either full or like double parked. It's just pandemonium. So then I have to circle back, and now I've wasted about 30 minutes. And now I'm starting to get worried that I don't know if I'm going to be able to have time to actually get parked, get to this event, get back to my car, and then get up to my comedy event in time. So I finally am just like, well, I better just see what I can do. So I just get in line of one of the parking lots, which is just backed up super far. And it ended up not taking as long as I thought it would. It did take me about 30, maybe 20, 30 minutes to actually get parked. So now it's 5 o'clock. And again, I have a show at 7 o'clock. That's an hour away. So I park, and the parking lot that I was able to get into was actually about a half mile away from the actual event where the acting agency was kind of set up on the beach. So then I've got to walk, and it's about a 20-minute walk until I finally find my networking event. So now it's almost like 5:20, which means pretty much if I was going to be on time to my gig, I would need to turn around and walk back to my car right then and get in the car to be on time. But I just figured, well, I'm here. Let me just kind of schmooze for a little bit. So I see a buddy of mine who's also repped by the agency. We talked for a little bit. I saw my commercial agent. I talked to him for a little bit. And then I ended up meeting just some really cool, this really cool actress. And we just started kind of hemming and hawing and, just chatting it up. And then she introduced me to a couple of friends. And I'm just going, yeah, this is what I wanted to do like at 1 o'clock so that I could just be here and just start kind of meandering around and just meeting real cool people. So it kind of got to that point to where I'm going, all right, there's no way I'm going to be on time to my stand-up gig, but I don't want to be like so late that, like I don't want to miss the show. So anyway, I met some really cool people. I had a chance to meet the president of the company who I had met a couple of months ago. I invited her out to the Magic Castle. So it's cool to see her. It's cool to see my buddy. Met some cool peeps. Got to see my commercial agent, what was really cool. And then I hopped in the car, or, had to walk back all the way to my car. Got in the car, drove up north. Again, it's about an hour drive to my stand-up comedy gig. Of course, I text the guy and just, hey, I got way behind. I'm going to be about 30 minutes late. Which I was. So I get there about 30 minutes late, and then I talk to the guy, and I mean, he's a really cool guy. Like, nobody was like mad or anything that I was that late. And it's not like a high-pressure gig. It was a gig at a winery, like a wine tasting club up in north of LA in Simi Valley. So, but the thing is I wanted to set up my piano and like cameras and stuff, which had I been there when I wanted to be there, I would have had plenty of time to do that. But now I was a little worried that maybe I wouldn't be able to do that. But fortunately for me, the guy running the show said, oh, well, we're actually going to do a quick intermission after the next comic. So I was like, that is perfect. So during the intermission, I was able to set up my keyboard, set up some cameras so I could get footage. And then I ended up ending the show. And I just had so much fun. So there was probably maybe 30 people there. It's not a big venue. It's just, it's like a little wine tasting club. So probably 30, 35 people maybe there. And but they were very attentive. They were there for comedy, which is always so fun. It's just so fun to find these kind of like smaller venues that aren't stand-up comedy venues, you know, restaurants and clubs and bars and, you know, just, you know, well, venues that aren't designated comedy venues, but they put a comedy show at the venue. And when those venues do it right and they really build up the fact that, like, hey, there's going to be a comedy show at our venue. Come buy a ticket or come show up for the comedy at this venue. They end up just being really fun, intimate shows because, again, it's usually a smaller audience, but it's an audience who came specifically to see comedy. And in this case, it's probably the only comedy show within, like, an hour of where they live. Like, there's no, like, comedy clubs in Simi Valley. So the closest comedy clubs are probably down in LA for them, which is, you know, like an hour drive. So for, like, these local people, it's super fun for them just to have an actual comedy show that they can just hop in their car and drive to real quick. So anyway, it was so much fun. I had such a blast, and got done with the comedy show, packed up all my stuff, and I realized right before I went on and performed that I was starting to get a migraine. So my head is actually pounding. And so I did my whole set with a migraine coming on, which was actually quite brutal. But, you know, I was on stage, I had all the endorphins, all the adrenaline was going, and so I was able to power through. But once I got back, everything packed up, got back to my car, oh my gosh, my head was absolutely brutally pounding. And, you know, which makes sense because I have just not been sleeping well, which is a trigger it's like when I do like multiple nights in a row where I'm only getting like 3-4 hours of sleep, it's almost like multiple all-nighters like stacking up. And that was the case because I've just been traveling so much. You know, I was in San Diego and then drove back and forth, and then I, you know, drove out to LA. So I'm driving back home because I pretty much had to get to LA. I mean, I wasn't going to drive all the way to Phoenix. I was like, I'm just going to see how far I can get before I need to just pull over and get some sleep. So, but I'm leaving the gig in Simi Valley, and man, I was like breaking out in cold sweats. I had the window down, and like, because it's a little bit obviously cooler out there on the West Coast. It was like 70 degrees, which was beautiful. So I like had the window down. I'm not playing any music because my head was just pounding, and any sort of extra sensory overload was just going to be too much. And there's a part of me that's like, I might need to pull over and throw up. That's how bad my migraines get. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that. I was just able to drive with the windows down, the cool air. And after about 2 hours, my migraines sort of let up, which I was really glad that it didn't get worse. And then I pulled off. I got a hotel in Indio, and my original intention was actually to film this when I got to my hotel room last night. But when I got to my hotel room, I'm just like, heck no. I hopped into bed immediately, and my body just crashed and just slept straight until this morning, which was very nice and very much needed. So that's why I am recording this now. And after I record this, I'm going to hop back into the car and make my way back to Phoenix, where this evening I'm going to be doing my 2 open mics. And there you go. So that's the update. This week is actually feels like a pretty slow week. I can't even... Oh, no. It's not a slow week. This Saturday, I'm going to do it all again because this Saturday I'm headlining in Temecula, and doing 2 shows, which means I'm going to turn right around and head back to Southern California this weekend. So super fun shows. I'm having a blast. My new material seems to be fairly ubiquitous. It seems to be doing well in multiple venues, multiple audiences, multiple demographics. So that is encouraging. And I'm starting to try to figure out what my next 20 minutes is going to look like. Because, again, I got about 20 minutes that's going pretty well. And, I need to at least triple that if I want to get like an actual 60-minute headlining spot. So I need 60 minutes of solid, ubiquitous material. And yeah, this next 20 minutes, it's been going slow. I don't even really have any sort of bits that I've come up with that I even really like that much. I'm just trying to write anything. So I'm just in this point of just pull out the notebook, write. And I'm hoping that eventually something will come out that I go like, oh yeah, that's something I want to really focus on and see if I can mold it into something. But that's the process, everybody. Just writing, refining, and hopefully at the end of that there will be a solid hour for me. So those of you who follow the podcast know that I have been reading or listening to the 48 Laws of Power, and I've been going through each chapter one by one and giving my thoughts on the laws of power. Ultimately, the book really seems to be geared towards individuals in a state of warfare, or who view life as war, view life as, in order for me to succeed, I must conquer everyone else and defeat everyone else. So everyone is either an ally or an enemy, but even my allies are really just there to serve my purpose of gaining power. And at any time, I can turn even my allies into enemies if it means gaining more power, which is just really not a life philosophy that I choose to live by. But then again, I'm not in a state of war. So I'm at a war against, myself. I am at a war against, time. I'm not so naive to assume that life is just a bed of roses. So I get that. However, the way that the book, sort of its philosophy on how people are and how they operate, or how you should operate in order to be successful in life, is a pretty cynical point of view. But I also get it, because there are evil, destructive human beings who in essence are probably using those same laws of power to conquer me. So, although I'm pretty critical of the book, I do just want to make it clear that I am very much aware that there is definitely times in life that will require somewhat of a more cynical, sometimes you gotta fight, and maybe it's not always physically with violence, but sometimes just mentally, or sometimes emotionally, sometimes it's just with your time. Sometimes it's just with setting very clear boundaries, or just being willing to cut certain people out of your life when you've determined that you're not in alignment with what it is that they are up to and what it is that you are up to, or that the way that you are being treated is not acceptable or tolerable. And, I get all that. I do get all that. So I just want to make sure that I am because again, I'm pretty critical of this book, but as much as I'm being critical of it, I am also fully aware that, well, there's a reason this book exists, and there are definitely circumstances in life where these 48 laws are absolutely accurate in terms of what may be necessary to gain power or survival. But like most things in life, I think there are multiple ways to approach a situation and multiple ways to interpret a situation and multiple actions and behaviors that can be had at any given moment. And I guess it really just depends on the outcome that you want. And if your outcome is absolute power and vanquishing foes, then these laws would be very effective. I'm more interested in creating a life of sustainable fulfillment, sustainable long-term relationships. I'm more interested in joy more than absolute power. And I don't know if power, meaning the capacity and resource to subdue other human beings to your will, is necessarily joyful. To me, what is joyful is aligning myself with other people who are seeking joy by following their passion and their dreams, and aligning myself with like-minded individuals who love to do whatever it is that they're doing and are striving to be the best at it, and find joy in progress and find joy and fulfillment in growth. And find joy and fulfillment in collaboration. Collaboration to me is so much more fun than manipulation and deceit. Or I am going to pretend that I'm collaborating with you, but really what I'm doing is I'm following one of the 48 laws of power, where I'm just trying to get you close to me so that then I can then use you and manipulate you for whatever resource it is that I want to siphon from you, but then, discard you as soon as it's no longer, that I no longer need you. I don't know. And maybe I'm wrong. What do I know? So today's law of power is, what was it? Keep your enemies in suspense, create an I think it was terrorize your enemies with suspense, keep an air of unpredictability. So again, if you're at war, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you are at war with somebody, terrorizing them with suspense, being unpredictable, I think, again, I can't really argue these laws as ineffective if that's what you're trying to do. I think what creates lasting relationships is actually an air of predictability. People know they can trust you. They know you're going to show up in a certain way. Now, I'm thinking about this in terms of like a romantic relationship, because everything I've ever heard about long-term relationships, right, is they do have a tendency to get boring if they are too predictable. So I do think that there is a caveat to being overly predictable, which is every once in a while, maybe it's good to spice things up a little bit in a good way by being unpredictable, breaking the pattern a little bit, breaking the monotony, so that every single day isn't wake up at the same time, go to work at the same time, eat the same lunch at the same time, come home at the same time, watch the same television show at the same time, eat the same dinner, go to bed at the same time, and do it all over again. That's very predictable, which does build sustainability over time, but can also get very boring. So I do think that there is an element of this principle in terms of being unpredictable to terrorize enemies. Sure. But maybe there's also a way that that could be adapted to just in a normal, fulfilling life is just finding ways to make it exciting every once in a while. Break the routine, be a little spontaneous, without you having to utilize this principle as a way to, like, terrorize enemies. Anyway, that's my thought on that. Not a lot of thoughts on this one, but that was just where my mind went. Again, if you're at war, yes, terrorizing your enemies is probably a good idea. If you're not at war and you want sustainable, fulfilling relationships, if they have become boring and stagnant, maybe mix things up. Throw a surprise party if it's not your birthday. Just one night say, why don't we just hop in a car and go to the beach? Who cares if it's 6 hours away? Or, let's take a flight to Cuba. I don't know. Throw a little spice in life, a little unpredictability, and I think that is, just my thoughts on that. Just my thoughts on this law of power. All right, everybody. I don't know if that was profound or not. I feel like it was kind of dumb. Anyway, but those are my thoughts. So this is all for today. I got to get in my car, get back to Phoenix for my 2 open mics that I'll be hosting this evening. So I will be doing that now. So this is the Paul Green Comedy Podcast for July 20th, 2024, episode 234. I hope you're all doing well. You're out there pursuing your dreams. You are finding joy and fulfillment as you do so. I love you all so much. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you tomorrow.